Hey everybody, Jeff Scott back with you for another installment of This Week in Regenerative News. It's Sunday evening. I wanted to get this recorded. I've got a basketball game I need to watch here in the next hour, so I want to knock this out. But nevertheless, if you've been checking back to our YouTube page, you know that we haven't posted any new content this week. I just had some other areas of the business that I had to focus on, but we plan on launching 3 to 4 pieces of content later this week that I think are really, are going to be really good. And part of the delay is not only working with new technology to bring a better viewing experience and a better learning experience, but also to do more from the presentation side of things. Get better about referencing and take deeper dives into things, and so you get a better platform for learning and internalizing this information that we like to present. So thanks for your patience. Just keep checking back, and that stuff will be up soon. So today I just have 2 articles, two papers essentially that I found that kind of intrigued me. One of the challenges you have in looking at regenerative news on a weekly basis is that this is somewhat of a thin market at this point, and there's a lot of incredibly esoteric, very specific types of papers and articles that are out there that I think really get into the weeds, whereas I'm trying to find something in the middle to give you a little depth, but at the same time, take away some general principles about regenerative medicine that can coalesce your thinking and understanding of what regenerative medicine is and what these various modalities can do and how they work. And so although there is a lot of stuff out there, sometimes it gets tough to identify something that's absolutely perfect, and I still have yet to find that. And I'm trying to stay as current as possible and not give you stuff from back in the day. But now that I think about it, maybe that might be a good step forward and start reviewing some of the foundational papers that at this point may be 10, 12, 15 years old. So, that's something we'll take a look at. But the 2 papers I have today, one, when I got into this business, when you're inundated with, exosomes, those things are really cool, and mesenchymal stem cells, those are really cool, and Wharton's jelly, what is that? How can that help? And PRP, how does that affect cell biology, healing, repair, regeneration, so on and so forth. And to really get a good understanding, you really have to understand how mesenchymal stem cells respond to inflammation, right? So, I remember I'd have customers who, would take mesenchymal stem cells and inject them into an inflamed finger, for example, a finger joint of all places. But what I learned, anecdotally, and it bears out in the literature now as well, is that mesenchymal stem cells don't do well in a hyperinflammatory environment. Hyperinflammation, it causes our own endogenous stem cells to really kind of go to sleep and recoil, and they're not doing their function. So one of the keys I found out is that you got to tamp down that inflammation either via more conventional pharmaceutical means or exosomes. A lot of the data out there on exosomes suggests that they're relatively anti-inflammatory. A lot of anti-inflammatory cytokines become the cargo and the payload for exosomes. So this study was looking at infarcted mice, so cardiac infarcted mice, and they wanted to see how a combination of exosomes and mesenchymal stem cells work together to minimize damage and or increase repair. So what they did, they had one group where they just treated with exosomes. Again, these are infarcted mice in a laboratory, and then they had another group where they pre-treated with exosomes, and then they administered intravenously a bolus of mesenchymal stem cells that one had been pre-treated with hypoxia and I'm going to butcher this, Tongzin Lao. It's a Chinese herb that anecdotally, and it looks like there's some clinical evidence for this. I'm not sure how it works, but it limits the extent of myocardial infarction and is also an antihypertensive. So they pre-treated these mesenchymal stem cells, and what they were looking to do, so creating an environment of hypoxia for the mesenchymal stem cells forces them to express. They tend to increase their migration, but they also increase expression of a receptor for a cytokine called SDF that is very prevalent in the heart tissues, and that stands for stromal cell-derived factor, and it works to limit damage caused by hypoxic ischemia or ischemic reperfusion injury in the heart. So by doing that, they wanted to give those mesenchymal stem cells an ability to interact at a high level with this cytokine to ideally maximize the performance of the construct. And what they found was the exosomes alone did not limit the progression of the infarct. Okay, but when you coupled exosome treatment, okay, and conceivably this is tamping down that inflammation I talked about, and then delivering those mesenchymal stem cells, which are a little more advanced and they're going to be focused more on healing, repair, and regeneration, they did see a limit in the degree of infarction in the heart, and they also saw some repair and regeneration that they weren't expecting to see. So to me, this is a paper, and there's probably more out there, we'll have to look, but really kind of confirms that theorem that you've got to keep that inflammation at bay, and that is what's going to give those stem cells, those mesenchymal stem cells, the best opportunity to do their thing and direct healing, repair, and regeneration, coupled with the endogenous machinery that's already in the specimen, whether that's a human being or a mouse. A big part of delivering exosomes and mesenchymal stem cells, yes, is to tamp down inflammation, but it's also to get those cells talking and waking up your endogenous stem cells so that they can start doing the things that they were designed to do. So that was the first paper. I thought it was pretty interesting. The next paper I wanted to share with you today is just really, it was this group at Southern California, USC. They were interested in how stem cells participate, how cells at the embryonic stage know what they're supposed to be, how they continue to differentiate down their stem cell lines. And they found that how important the cell's ability to talk to each other truly is. And how do you think they're accomplishing that? Yeah, one way is clearly exocytosis of free soluble proteins. That's certainly possible. But they're also using extracellular vesicles to communicate, send those protein messages. Proteins are the language of life, and that's how things get done in the body, is through these protein messages. So using autocrine, paracrine, endocrine modalities of communicating, the cell-to-cell communication is really what's driving. Again, I always say stem cells function more as a project manager than something that's actually doing something. Now, in the embryonic stages, they're taking a much more active role and resulting in downstream pluripotential lines that develop into the different tissues. But this paper demonstrated that there's a huge component. Now, they still haven't figured out exactly what that is. I'm sure it's incredibly complicated, but what they do conclude is that intercellular communication is largely what is driving differentiation of different tissue lines as an embryo grows and as we develop in the womb. So I thought that was a pretty cool paper. And it's definitely worth checking out. And if you don't check it out, really the one takeaway from my perspective is that intercellular communication is very important, and that can happen in many, many different ways. But utilizing a cellular utilization of extracellular vesicles and or exosomes or other type of microvesicles to deliver those developmental messages, it's important. And it circles back to what we talk about from from the potential therapeutic standpoint of regenerative medicine, is that these protein messages are really powerful and they can exert a lot of different functions in the body, including healing, repair, and regeneration. So we'll continue to dive deeper into all of these subjects as we move forward. So thanks, guys, for listening. I appreciate it. It's a Sunday night. Have a great start to your week. We'll see you soon. Stay regenerative, my friends.